Hello everybody, it's me, Nate, aka Devil Dog, and I'm back with a walkthrough for FFXIV's I don't know if I said it right, the new hard mode dungeon that was just released on Final Fantasy Online on patch 4.4. The recommended item level to enter this is 340 and it drops level 355 gear. Now when you first start out, you really won't have to deal with much other than 3 different sets of mobs that you can have. Now if you have a high enough level tank and healer, you can just pull all the mobs together and put her down real quickly to get to the first boss. I don't think you should have any problems with these guys. These ads are really a cake. But on to the first boss already. Your first boss is Nullchew, and he'll have certain moves that he'll cast throughout his battle. First one, he'll start off with his Odious Air, which is a frontal poison blast. Pretty much the tank will just have to deal with it, heal him through it. It's not that big of a deal. The next move he'll do is called Vine Whip, which is a frontal slash attack. Really nothing to really have to worry about at all. But now as you progress through this battle, he'll actually start laying down poison pools that you'll have to avoid that's in the area. If you step to him, he will get a poison on you. But the one move you have to start paying attention to that he'll cast is right here. It's called Fault Warren, where he will place an item over your head and you just want to stack, alleviate the damage to spread it between your players to where you shouldn't have any problems. Now as the battle progresses, then he'll do this move called Devour, where there'll be an ad placed on the arena and he'll jump to it to eat it. What you want to do is get right next to him. As long as you're right next to him, you avoid his big blast. It's a large cone AoE that causes poison. He'll do this throughout the battle. If you ever see another ad on there, don't worry about the ad. You don't have to fight it. Just pay attention for when it actually pops up and says Devour, because that means he's going to jump over to it. So get over to the ad as quick as possible so you can stand right next to him and you won't have to deal with that. Now, once you get him down to about 50%, he'll start casting a move called Taproot. It's basically a little icon that'll appear underneath your character. Just space out and you won't really have to worry about it. That's really the only moves this guy does. He's really not that difficult. Just remember, Odious Air is a frontal poison blast. Vine Whip is a frontal slash attack. Watch out for the poison pools he lays on the ground. Fault Warren, he will pick a player and have an icon over their head where you'll want to stack to avoid taking a lot of damage. And Devour is his main move, where he will have an ad on the arena that you will want to run over when he eats it to stand next to him to avoid his large conal AoE attack. And Taproot, where he'll place an icon underneath each character and you'll just want to spread out on the map so you don't overlap to take a lot of damage. As long as you just pay attention to these moves, you'll have no problem in beating Nullchew and getting on to the second part of this dungeon. Now, the only real thing you have to deal with the ads here is a guy known as a Blooming Bielko. He'll do a move that's called Roly Poly. You can use it to your advantage if you get other enemies in it. It will actually make their defense down. But other than that, that's the only thing you have to deal with the ads. You're on to your second boss already, Ajamu. I don't know if I said the name right. But at the start of the fight, she'll pretty much start casting Stone 2 on whoever she's attacked to, which is just a front attack. Nothing special there. But then she'll start casting a move called Tectonics, which is a room-wide ground AoE that you can't avoid, you'll just have to heal through. Now, as the fight progresses, she'll start doing her main move, which is known as Landslip, where you'll see all these arrows that are flying across the bottom and these golems standing off to the side. And what you got to do is stand on one of these patches that's the arrows that's moving in a certain direction to get it to move you when it goes off in a certain distance. That way you avoid going out of the arena and taking damage, stab damage, and also by getting hit by the rock blast of the golems. It can be kind of tricky, but once you figure out the total distance, how far it'll move you each time, you won't have a problem figuring out where to stand. As the fight progresses, the golems will move around in different directions. You can even have golems on both sides that make a crisscross pattern that you'll have to really figure out where to stand in order to have the arrows push you in the correct area. Now, the next move that she'll do is known as Earthquake, which is a ground donut AoE. First, it'll start directly underneath her, then it'll move out to the donut ring a little bit wider her out. So it's best to actually get far away from her, a little bit away from her for the one in the middle to go off, and then run back underneath her to avoid the outside donut ring AoE. Her next move she'll do is known as something as Earthshaker, where she will target 2 players with an icon over your head. And what you want to do is space far apart from the other players, and hopefully with the other players not in the path, because it will shoot out and do a AoE conal blast that's connected to you and the other person. The closer you stand, the more damage you will take, and the farther away you get, the less damage you'll take. But keep in mind, anyone that's in between you two, if you have that icon, they will take damage from that blast. Now the last real move you have to deal with her is something known as Empty Gaze. When you see the eye icon, just look away from her, and pretty much I believe it's like a charm effect. As long as you just stop attacking and turn and look away from her, you'll be fine. Now that's really the only moves that she does, but around at 50% health, she'll start casting her moves faster. Just remember you have to deal with Stone 2, which is a frontal attack, Tectonics, which was a room-wide ground AoE attack, Landslip, which is the weird arrow pattern path where you have to stand in a certain area to have the arrows push you out of the way of the golem's blast, Earthquake, which is the ground AoE followed by a large donut AoE, Earthshaker, where it targets 2 players that you have to spread far away from the other players to avoid taking massive damage, and Empty Gaze. Look away. It's a charm attack. As long as you just watch out for those moves, you'll have no problem in beating Ajamu and getting on to the 3rd part of this dungeon. These next batch of monsters really ain't too difficult, but the only thing I really want to point out while you're fighting them is these certain areas you'll come across, you'll see something on the wall that's called a water conduit. Now if you activate those, it will actually have water pour out of the wall, and if you can get the enemies to walk underneath it, it will wash the mud off of them, and they will become less mean and a lot easier to kill. It's almost like a debuff to them. So the trick is make sure when you do see these water conduits, you don't have to use them. But if you feel free to, go ahead and activate them, get the enemies to go underneath the water, it'll wash them off, turn them into a much easier, different monster you can actually beat and kill, and then you can just move on to the next area. And your final boss of this dungeon is Mr. Hankey, the Christmas Pooh. He loves me and he's gonna kill you. Oh no, this guy's name is Takapachi, I think. I can never say their names right. Now when you start this battle, the main thing you will notice is the first move he will do is something called Mudsling, which is a basic frontal swipe. You don't really have to deal with it, it's not that bad. But the main mechanic of this fight is the floor will start pulsating, and you want to stand on the green circle tiles to avoid the mud coming up and taking damage. This will happen throughout the rest of the battle, so you have to pay attention. It doesn't really tell you, it'll just happen. Now the next move he'll cast on you is called Quagmire, and it's an AoE like a pink icon on each character, and you'll want to move over to the brown crated areas away from the others and also avoiding getting on the green circles. Because if you're standing too close to one of those green circles, Quagmire will actually turn it into a non-safe zone you will not be able to stand on and use for quite a while. His next move is known as Mud Pie, where he will summon a mud slime. Now this part is the main mechanic as well as the floor one as well. What you want to do is you can actually hit this mud slime and get him to slide around and move on to the green areas. You want to keep him on one of those green circles so whenever the floor is spraying up mud, it does not make him stronger. Because if you do, he'll get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it will lead to some bad problems. Now at this point, he'll sometimes start casting a move called Bog Bequest, which is basically a floor-wide donut-style AoE. You'll just want to get close to him to avoid taking damage. Now, also, he'll occasionally cast some different little ads, these guys called Muddy Dorkapers, I think they're called. You can kill them pretty easily. That's not a big problem. Now, the main thing you'll have to deal with, though, is once you actually have this mud slime out there on the field, is he'll do a move called Feculent Flood, which is a very large frontal AoE cone blast at the direction of the mud slime. And what you need to do is you need to run over and hit the mud slime out of the way of his blast and back onto another green circle to avoid it exploding. Because if he hits it with his frontal blast, it will explode and a whole party will take massive damage. Now, depending on if this mud slime has been on the mud and it's gotten bigger or not, or if you were able to keep him on the green circles, that's how much damage he'll do. So if he gets rather large and then he hits him with the Feculent Flood and blows him up, it will be a team wipe and you will will have to start over. But really, these are really the only main mechanics you have to deal with this guy. As long as you just remember, Mudsling is a frontal swipe, not really a big deal. Always keep an eye on the floor to start pulsating. When it does, stand on one of the green circle tiles to avoid taking damage. Quagmire is a pink icon AoE over top of you that you want to move to one of the brown graded areas away from the others and avoid the green circles. Mud Pie is when the mud slime will appear and you have to play past the ball with them to keep them on one of the green circles to avoid getting mud on them to make them stronger. Bog Bequest, you make sure you want to get close to him because it's a ring AoE attack. And Feculent Flood, where he will actually try to blow up that mud slime and you have to get him out of the way to avoid him exploding. As long as you deal with these moves, you'll have no problem in beating Tokapichi and beating this dungeon. This was Nate, aka Devil Dog, and I want to thank everyone who subscribes to my channel. I want to say thank you for everyone who watches this video. I hope it was helpful. And remember, I always end my videos by saying, have fun, play hard, and remember, people, the devil is in the details. Peace out.